Welcome to this week's edition of the Belau Report. I'm Jane Belau. Our guest this week is an Olmsted County Commissioner, and her name is Laurel Podulke Smith. And Podulke is a very visible name in the county with both your dad and your mom as commissioners.
It's a pretty well-known name.
It is. But you are going to outshine them all. And
thank you for your confidence in me.
Oh, well, good. What is your happiest moment now that you're a commissioner?
Oh, well, my happiest moments are when I have the opportunity to attend community events, and they are meaningful, and they just reflect this amazing and diverse and visionary and forward-looking community that we live in. So I just now came from an event at the City Hall Rotunda of a traveling display of the history of African American families in Rochester, Minnesota.
Is it that good?
It was fantastic, with speakers from all generations, including Joyce Gibbs and George Thompson and younger speakers. I mean, it was completely inspiring. And having grown up in Rochester, an event like that, so visible and with so many people in attendance and so much energy, it's truly soul inspiring. It was just events like that are really the highlights of my job.
Now, are you still in the learning phase, or you have accomplished that basic county commissioner role?
I think I'll be in the high-speed learning phase for at least another year. You know, I anticipated about 2 years of pretty much constant and wide-ranging learning. And although I am gaining a sense of accomplishment and moving toward some goals, but I'm the kind of person who really likes to have a thorough baseline knowledge of things, especially when they impact the lives of other people. So I'm learning continuously. It's a lot of fun. It's very interesting. It's humbling and meaningful. And this year I will start to move toward goals and start to develop the initiatives that are most important to me that I'd like to accomplish.
Okay, you have named the county as an aging priority, and what does that mean?
Could you just clarify the question? I didn't quite catch it.
The aging priority about the county and how it will recognize that we are all aging.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So our largest demographic, our demographic of people that is most growing is our seniors and our aging population. Our former board chairman, Greg Wright, has been advocating and presenting and educating and learning and on this whole topic of our aging population for many years. So he really brings that voice and that priority forward personally and on behalf of the board. So there's actually an event on Rochester as an age-friendly community happening this Thursday. It's being facilitated by Dave Beal, from Family Service Rochester. I'm sure if anyone does a quick Google search, they can find the time and the location. But it is an event that will update the community on the successes and some of the achievements of Olmsted County as an age-friendly community.
Okay. And so that is a priority?
That is definitely a priority.
Okay. Now, what is, in your view, the greatest need in Olmsted County?
Well, we are making our way through the great need for housing our unsheltered population, essentially solving the growing problem of homelessness. And we are so fortunate to have Dave Dunn as the Director of Housing, including our homelessness efforts. He's the Director of Housing and Planning for Olmsted County, and he recently presented to the County Board at our most recent retreat a unified approach to solving and ending homelessness in Olmsted County through by adopting what is essentially the state's vision, the state of Minnesota's vision and initiative toward homelessness, which is to approach it preventatively, to make prevention the top priority, and then if and when homelessness happens, to make it brief, rare, and one time, so that we have housing solutions in place for people and families experiencing homelessness in Rochester, in Olmsted County, and this is following a state vision, and in many ways it reflects a national vision of moving toward ending homelessness. It's an initiative called Built for Zero.
Are we close?
We are not close. We are on our way, and we are moving toward the solution. As you probably know, Olmsted County had a plan in place for creating emergency shelter for people experiencing homelessness. We did not get the $10 million grant that would have required, and so we had to do a reset. We had to rethink how we will create shelter for our residents experiencing homelessness. And part of our new approach will include a unified community approach involving all the stakeholders in this area, including Olmsted County, the Landing, the Dorothy Day House, the Salvation Army, and Dave Dunn and his team are in discussions with the city to hopefully bring them on board this unified approach, as well as other agencies that address homelessness. And I think through this combined effort with many agencies working together within a shared framework, a shared language, and shared understanding for allocation of resources, that this is a way that we can solve homelessness and work toward ending homelessness much more efficiently than each separate agency working on their own.
The city is going to vote on the ban on parking on the city parks being used for camping. And you don't have to vote on that, but how do you see this effort by the city?
Well, the county will be ready to respond to those decisions, to those actions, essentially changes in ordinance. The county will be ready to respond as those changes are made, as the city makes those decisions. Those aren't our decisions to make, but we are ready to respond as they come.
Yeah. Okay. How much is your need at this time? How many families you have that don't have secure housing?
Rochester and Olmsted County have numerous ways to provide shelter and housing to individuals and families experiencing homelessness. There's a wonderful nonprofit in town called Family Promise, and they provide shelter and a multitude of other resources for families experiencing homelessness. I do know that there is a waiting list for those programs, and Olmsted County is partnering with Family Promise, and we are in the midst right now of renovating a multi-unit essentially household that will be able to house several more people. So we are on the cusp of expanding our capacity to house and provide shelter and resource for families. So that's moving in a very good direction. In terms of individual adults experiencing homelessness, they usually have to turn at least a few people away at the warming shelter, which is a county-owned and Catholic Charities operated shelter facility. And thankfully, the Salvation Army agreed to accommodate those overflow individuals, which they're doing. It's especially crucial throughout the winter in these colder months, although we're not having a particularly cold winter right now. In other winters, the cold temperatures were extremely dangerous for people living outside or spending much of their day outside. So at the moment, we have a temporary solution for everyone in Rochester experiencing homelessness who is seeking shelter, who wishes to be sheltered. Olmsted County is, again, partnering with these key stakeholders to make what is now more of a temporary solution, a permanent, sustainable, and expandable solution as we move forward.
Are you involved in Old City Hall and the efforts there to include a variety of people, not just the homeless, but also people who have minimal assets, and you are involved?
Right. Olmsted County is purchasing that property in order to turn it into housing for low income and other disadvantaged or potentially vulnerable residents to have safe, accessible, and permanent shelter at a rate that can accommodate a low income, a low income standard. So yes, that property is owned by Olmsted County, and as a board, we did vote to support that purchase of the residents of Old Town Hall for this new use. Originally, that was intended to be the site for our emergency shelter. The funding didn't come through, so we did a pivot. We really did a reset, and the very intelligent, compassionate, and wise people that we have on our housing team developed a new use for the residences of Old Town Hall that will serve many of the people that Olmsted County serves to begin with.
How does the county afford the kind of social services that you are by state mandate, I understand, to provide for people who are low income?
So Olmsted County was able to afford the purchase of the residents of Old Town Hall, we call it the ROTH, the ROTH, through the HRA, our Housing and Redevelopment Authority, which has its own levy line, which has essentially about a $4 million budget yearly. And so, plus there are other grants and funding sources that flow into the HRA budget. So that's how the HRA was able to buy the Roth. Many of our other programs that are housed within the division of our Health, Housing, and Human Services. I think you were specifically asking about our Human Services department. The programs and services that are delivered through our Human Services are so wide-ranging and vast. It's really many dozens. It's hundreds of employees delivering many dozens of programs and services, about 80% of which are mandated. They're required by the state for counties to deliver. And the way that these programs and services are funded in a variety of ways, and one of the main ways that we receive funding is through the property taxes that Olmsted County collects, which you might heard talked about as the levy. So many human services are levy funded. They're also state grant funded. And then there are also internal revenue sources, small, but not insignificant revenue sources within human services that contribute to those yearly revenues.
The soil and water is becoming probably more visible than it has been because of the feds and their interest in Minnesota water. And what are the soil and water provisions that the county is enacting?
The county has a soil and water conservation district, so we have a whole department that is dedicated to keeping our aquifers healthy and keeping our groundwater safe, and dedicated to soil health. So that framework is in place. And something that is a program that was initiated a few years ago with ARPA funds is a soil and water health program that started by asking farmers to plant cover crops and to assess if keeping cover crops instead of a bare field, if keeping cover crops aided in water health and in the reduction of nitrates in the soil. And it turns out that the answer is yes, that that nitrates are reducing, and that soil health is improving, and that groundwater safety is improving through these cover crop initiatives. So that's being expanded, and now I believe it's 87 participants or 87 farmers have the option to continue this pilot program. They can plant cover crops. They have a variety of other small grains that they can choose to plant, or hay and grazing as well. So that program is going well, and it's expanding.
And it's expensive.
Oh, and it's expanding. It's growing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. The funds come from ARPA funds, so the funds are already in place. It's not an additional expense.
Good. All right, mental health is another area that the county is very interested in, and also law enforcement. And where is the overlap, and what is the county doing in that area?
Well, there is so much overlap between mental health and law enforcement. Mental health distress and mental health crises so often lead to law enforcement involvement. And so there are several ways I can answer this question, but I'll start first with mental health, and it is increasingly clear that mental health is a top community priority in terms of well-being, and that youth mental health is definitely suffering and worsening in our community and nationwide. And so for that reason, recently when our county board met with our state legislators, we advocated for improving facilities and capacity to serve youth and adults who are experiencing mental health crises. So we are really advocating for that expansion, expanding facilities, care. We're also advocating for a Medicaid exemption, and what that means is that adults seeking mental health care at our Southeast Regional Crisis Center, our CIRC, those services are covered by Medicaid. But for youth 17 years of age or younger, those same services aren't covered by Medicaid because they're minors. So we are imploring our state legislators to make a Medicaid exemption for youth and children and their care when they're experiencing mental health crises.
Right.
We've also, so this is where the opioid settlement comes in, and it includes mental health and law enforcement. There's great overlap here in that we, as a county, have an opioid settlement from the opioid trials that took place. And that means that we have $2.7 million coming in over the next 18 years. And what the county and the city is going to do with much of those opioid funds is we've already hired community outreach workers who will be present at in law enforcement situations where law enforcement has been called in, and it's clear that mental health is exacerbating the problem or is the primary driver of the problem. So a mental health professional accompanies a law enforcement officer and can help work with that person or that family in a mental health crisis rather than escalating it to a place where it really doesn't need to be. It needs to be in the hands of a mental health professional and mental health resources, as opposed to a person winding up in the emergency room or in jail or in a facility where they just really don't belong at that moment.
We are at our last 4 minutes
Wow.
already.
It goes by so fast.
I know
I
it.
just got here.
Okay, where is your personal priority within the context of the county's priorities?
Great question. It's hard to pick just one. I would say that I continue to be focused on expanding our housing options for low income and workforce housing individuals and families in Rochester and in Olmsted County. That because we are such a quickly growing community, people will need places to live that are safe, accessible, and affordable. And so I continue to advance the conversation. I continue to support the initiatives that expand and build those housing options for the people who live in Rochester and Olmsted County, who are in need of an affordable place to live, and the people who are moving here, the people who are coming, our future residents, who won't be able to live here unless they have a place to live. So I think housing really is it is a great community need and puzzle to solve, and there are a lot of passionate and brilliant minds who are on top of really this conundrum of finding and expanding our housing options locally.
The city and the county are growing exponentially, and the Mayo Clinic is helping them, and there are jobs and education programs to fit the jobs. Are you as enthused as the city and the other commissioners are about the future?
I'm an optimist. I am so enthusiastic about the future. I have a really good feeling about Rochester and Olmsted County in the next 50 years. And while it's true that we are a growing, exponentially growing community, it's also true that it would serve everyone to remember that our growth trajectory is pretty extreme, and that for all of us, if we can make a priority of learning to live a simpler life, a less consumptive life, a life oriented toward community, reduction, reuse, recycling, that as we embrace simplicity as a personal value, as a community value, that we'll be better prepared for the future.
And that will be a good legacy. All right, Laurel Podulke Smith, thank you for your work on the County Board of Commissioners, and we look forward to many more years of the same.
Thank you, Jane. It's always a pleasure.
Okay. And we thank you, our viewers, for your interest in the county, the community, the state, the nation, and the world. And we'll be back next week, same time, same channel. In the meantime, have a very good evening and a very good life.